and need a check? Make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900. And always online at lernerandrowe.com. Now time for Calling All Sports with Rock and Manooch with Jimmy B on Fox Sports 910.
Let's get right to it. Suns avoided the play-in tournament after they won yesterday to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They got them in the playoff now. Joining us to talk Suns, everything Suns, as the playoffs are here. Gerald Bourguet joins us, lead Suns writer for PHNX, and he is now on Fox Sports 910. Gerald, Rock, Manooch, Jimmy B, thanks so much for jumping on with us today. I want to get your thoughts on where's the mental state of this team right now, as this team has been kind of on a roller coaster the last few weeks. A lot of you in the fan base, us included, we're like, oh, no, what's going on here? Where are they? You're around this team a lot more than everyone else there.
Yeah, I think over the last week we've seen it hit some real lows and then bounce back for some real highs. Mm-hmm. And I think it started with that fourth quarter in Sacramento, a game where through three quarters it felt like more of the same that we had seen against the Clippers earlier in the week. And then Bradley Beal just decided, I'm not going to let this team lose. And there was some fire, there was some passion. The big three came out and took care of a game they needed to win to keep hopes alive for the 6th seed. And then they followed that up with a resounding victory against a Minnesota team that they match up really well against. So I think there's a good amount of confidence. They avoided a play-in, a do-or-die scenario. They get a week of rest now, and now they're going up against a Timberwolves team that they've beaten all three times this season by a combined 47 points. So this is about as good of an outcome as you could hope for as a Suns fan, looking at, the potential first-round matchups they could have been paired with. And, this is a team that has always talked about wanting to peak at the right time. And depending on how much confidence they gain from this matchup against the Wolves, they could turn into something a little bit more dangerous than we were expecting about a week ago.
John, I want to go back to that Sacramento game. Being down by 16 at that point seems like reality set in with this team. Like, look, if we don't turn it on and go make this run, we could be in the play-in tournament. Is that about the time they started to make the run and playing defense and hitting shots and imposing their will on the Kings and then carrying that over to Minnesota?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think Beal was instrumental in setting that tone. They've been playing him a little bit more recently to start fourth quarters by himself to just give him the full reins. And he's gotten a lot more comfortable being aggressive as a scorer, despite, being asked to do a lot more of the point guard activity. So Brad finding his scoring touch, being more consistent, everybody staying healthy. These are all positive things. And it felt like in that Sacramento game, switch just kind of flipped in his head and in the Suns' head that it's time, like he said in his post-game interviews, it's time.
I'm really curious about the contract extension for Grayson Allen. I thought that he was one of the most important pieces that they acquired in the offseason. He proved his worth with his terrific three-point shooting. He is also their best perimeter defender. Now the Suns and owner Matt Ishbia are going to be way over the cap, and so he's going to pay those extra taxes. What do you find about the owner making that move and not afraid to go after top talent?
Yeah, it's crucial, and it's awesome to see an owner who backs up what he says, because I actually had asked him about this last month when I got a chance to speak to him about the implications of being a team that's in the second luxury tax apron, about Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal both being free agents this summer, and how the Suns could re-sign them using their bird rights, which would, allow them to offer more than a team over the cap typically can, but would come with hefty luxury tax payments. And he said, look, we're trying to win here. No matter what it costs, we're trying to win. We love Grayson and Royce. We want to keep them. We want them here beyond this season because of what they provide for us on and off the court. And it's awesome that he was able to back that up with an in-season extension that's really team-friendly. I know it's going to cost about $80 million combined in payroll and luxury tax payments for this first year of his deal, but it's really a steal if you look at the fact that he's only 5 months older than Cam Johnson and is getting paid, $24.5 million less in total there. That's a pretty great steal for a guy who led the league in three-point percentage, who's been lights out, who's been a great fit next to the big three, is having a career year, and who wants to be in Phoenix. The fact that they were able to get him for that price speaks to how much he wanted to stay here, how much he's enjoyed playing with the Suns team, and how much he recognizes that playing with the big three opens things up for him. There's a stat on NBA.com that I think about 81% of his three-pointers this season have been designated as wide open, which means the nearest defender is 6+ feet away. So 80% of his shots are wide open playing with this big three. He understands his importance to the Suns, and he understands their importance to his success as well. So it's great that they're bringing him back.
Gerald, you mentioned that, they had Bill at the point. They pulled the other two off the court and allowed the other guys and allowed him to get in the flow. Do you think that the team has finally found the roles for this team, the bench, and everybody's comfortable with those rules for the greater good of winning it all? Do you feel that that's finally there after these last two victories?
I think we're getting a lot closer, that's for sure. And a lot of this is matchup dependent because you look at their up and down week. Like the Clippers are a bad matchup for the Suns, but a team like Minnesota and even a team like Denver, series where Yusuf Nurkic won't get played off the floor, are good matchups. And so I think that's why they're optimistic. I think that's why we saw them have so much success against Minnesota, is because they have those rotations kind of ironed out. They know who they can rely on in certain matchups coming off the bench, what those lineups are going to look like. And just having Beal out there, for an extended stretch, that's the tough part, is this only wound up 41 games together this season, about half the season. And a lot of it was so chopped up. You'd have one guy out and then he'd come back, but another guy would go down. You didn't get like these prolonged stretches where you could really have all three of them out there and build something. So now over these last couple of weeks, all three have been healthy. You've been able to see them kind of approach what we saw back in December and January when they were first starting to get all three of those guys out there at the same time. They're starting to build towards cohesion. They're starting to lineups work best around them. And I think Beal finding his aggression is a key part of that too.
I think I saw a Gerald Bourguet tweet, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, and it referenced Isaiah. And the only reason I'm bringing that up, because if this team were to struggle and lose in the first round, Gerald, is Isaiah Thomas's name going to be much more in the forefront? Or if they go on a nice run, does the Isaiah Thomas name go away?
You're talking about Isaiah Matt Ishbia's
yes.
friend, Isaiah Thomas?
Yep, you got it. That was your tweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I think if the Suns fail to get, to the conference finals or the finals, we could see a situation where you're looking at a roster that's going to be remarkably similar next season. You don't have a ton of options to build. You don't have any cap space really, and your trade options are kind of limited there as well.
3.
So the first person to come under is probably going to be the head coach. And I don't know what type of role Matt Ishbia might envision for a guy like Isaiah Thomas. He hasn't coached in the NBA in a long time. He hasn't even been in the NBA in an official role in a long time. But hopefully that's not something we'll have to worry about. They are obviously close. Isaiah Thomas is on his board for UWM as well. So definitely something to monitor, but I would like to think they would go with a little bit more experience and especially recent experience if they made a change in the head coaching position or in the front office.
Well, and speaking of the bench going to be ready to go against this Timberwolves teams. You mentioned it, Gerald. The Suns have pretty much blown them out in their 3 victories. But then again, as things get tighter, is this bench going to be who's been averaging 15, 20 at maybe most over these last 2 weeks, going to be capable to keep up with the Timberwolves with their starters?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the Timberwolves have a little bit of an advantage in depth if you look at the body of work over the season. But this is a very drastically different bench team from, even just before the trade. Look at bringing in Royce O'Neal and the impact he's been able to have on both ends, how seamlessly he's fit in as, a 3-point shooter, as a defender at multiple positions, as a guy who can move the ball where it needs to go. I think Eric Gordon is really good for this particular Timberwolves matchup because the Suns are able to spread that Wolves #1 defense out with all the shooters that they have, and Gordon plays a key part in that. The biggest concern for me is the center depth behind Yusuf Nurkic. If Nurk gets in foul trouble like he did on Sunday, we saw them kind of struggle in the Drew Eubanks minutes, and Thad Young as well wasn't really great in that particular game. So Frank Vogel is going to have to make a decision. He sticks with a more traditional big and Eubanks, who's kind of struggled this season, or if he, busts out Thad Young and some small ball looks.
1 minute.
If he goes to KD. The good news is, for all the concerns about the bench, the starters are going to be playing, upwards of 40 minutes a night to hopefully negate some of that. But it will be interesting. And I think a lot of this, for a guy like Bol especially, is going to be matchup dependent too.
30 seconds left, roughly. I'll just throw this one at you. The NBA is famous for players with nicknames. Do you find this series to be that interesting with nicknames? For the T-Wolves, you have Cat and you have Ant-Man. And then for the Suns, you have Book and KD.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a little bit better. I prefer the Slim Reaper for KD, and we still need to come up with something but it is kind of iconic to shorten it. But no, I mean, I love the Cat nicknames, love Ant-Man. It's going to be a fun series for sure.
Gerald, thanks so much, man. Keep up the great work. We enjoy your work, so thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Gerald Bourguet joining us, Suns lead writer for PHNX Sports. Does a tremendous job, real dialed in. Appreciate him taking some time. He's brought to you today by the CAZ Sportsbook. That's where we are today, every Monday. Bet the game, watch the game. It's the Sportsbook here in Casino, Arizona, in the CAZ Sports Bar. They also have the Rocket Minuch Amber here they have the lager here. So try it out. Thanks to our friends at Huss. Again, they have 3 live betting windows, 6 self-service betting kiosks, plus 8 screens that display all of the betting lines. Continue talking about the Suns team. Do they have to take to get by a team that they've beat pretty bad